Don't you just love dealing with all the nitpicky details? Mwahaha! Proofreading is the last final check to make sure nothing looks wrong, to make sure nothing is wrong. You should already have your argument down pat before you start editing, but you should have your word choice down before you start proofreading. So how do you do it? Glad you asked. Proofreading is about getting the language correct according to the proper academic rules, the proper dialogue being used. It's about making your sentences as clear, correct, concise, comprehensible, and consistent as possible. There are lots of words that are easy to get confused with each other, and spell check has no idea what they are. Again, if we want to reference the punks yesterday and today, the shear effect, SHEAR, that's not the shear that writer needed, but spell check doesn't know. One of the best ones I ever saw was a student who wrote about somebody being taken for granite. Not granted, granite, the stone. So the most common of these is the there, and there. There, EIR, means possession. The children decided to get off their bikes to enter the park. There, THERE, is locating them. There are two children cycling towards the park. It situates them in time and space. Now, we could talk about there as in they are, but no contractions in formal writing, please. Contractions, the problem with them and why we don't want them is a contraction reminds the reader of spoken language instead of written language, and spoken language is always seen as less formal than written. So, no contractions. Than and than are different words. Than is used to introduce the second part of a comparison. Than is used to situate something in time. She can run faster than her brother. I'm invited to the party, so I'll see you then. They might sound the same if you speak them depending on your particular accent, but they're not the same words. And again, spell check will not catch this for you, so you need to do that level of proofreading. It's and its. It is one of the few words that if you want to make it possessive, you do not put an apostrophe. It's just ITS. And as far as IT apostrophe S, when there's an apostrophe, it's a contraction of it is or it has. And what did we say about apostrophes? We don't use them. There are a ton of words that get confused with each other. I'm certainly not going to give you a list, and I'm not going to expect you to remember a list. But you should know that there are enough of these that sound like something else that you really need to do a read through just to make sure you're using the words you think you're really using. Spell check will not help you. So let's talk about structure, and specifically sentence structure. There are three main issues that come up with sentence structure. A sentence at its root is a subject performing an action. I speak. He yells. She punches. Subject performing an action. If that gets away from the reader, you get sentence structure issues, and these are not great. I was walking home from the bar. I tried to climb the railroad crossing arm. Okay. Incidentally, I used to teach at Bowling Green, and this happened at least once a week. But there is I was walking. Subject, verb. I tried. This person is basically cramming two sentences together. Now, the first thing to think about is, do these sentences need to be together? If there's a reason to join them, there's ways to join them, but you can't just cram the suckers together. If you just throw a comma in the middle of it, it's not really any better. A comma splice is still two complete clauses, subject to verb combinations crammed together. Comma itself does not do that job. A semicolon would, but semicolons are tricky on their own. Fragments, and I was arrested. Now, The problem here is that the and refers to something that's going on in the sentence before it. If I wrote and was arrested, it's obvious that it's a fragment, but and I was arrested means that I have to read the previous sentence to make sense of this bit at all. This bit is obviously part of a whole. If you have a coordinating conjunction like and, it needs to conjunct something. Conjunct, is that even a word? But you know what I mean. It connects things. Here, it's just showing that this is the second part of a connection without giving you the first. Punctuation always has a purpose. There are rules for all of these, and if you really want to get into them, there is a link in Blackboard links. Capital Community College's Guide to Grammar Mechanics will give you any number of rules for all of these. Commas, as we said, are a particularly important one, though, because people are told a lot of wrong stuff about them. But commas are actually important. If you really like cooking your family, I don't want to know about it. Commas are units of organization. They help you organize meaning. So if you don't put them in, your meaning isn't connected in the way it should be. Now, if I gave you a writing handbook, I can guarantee you there'd be at least 12 pages of rules on commas. But rather than try to give you every single instance, I'm going to give you the ones that you actually have to worry about. You already know that if you're doing a list, you put a comma after each item, including the one before the coordinating conjunction. I like cooking, comma, my family, comma, and my pets. That's the Oxford comma. We use it. You know that if you're writing a 4-digit number, you put a comma after the first one. Every 3 numbers, there's a comma. But the ones we really have to worry about, 1, non-restrictive modifiers. If there's information in the middle of the sentence which is completely not necessary. George Washington, our first president, served 2 terms. Well, yeah, he is our first president, but do we need to know that to make sense of the sentence? It's nice information, but it's not essential to the meaning here. So it gets put into commas so we can see that it's a non-restrictive modifier or non-essential clause. I've heard them both used. So one purpose of commas, show us stuff that we don't have to pay all that much attention to. If you're reading something that's really complex, knowing this will help you guide where your attention needs to be. When you need to send 2 sentences together, if there's a reason to connect 2 sentences, then you use a comma plus a coordinating conjunction for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. That's not all of them, but it's enough. I checked out 3 books from the library, comma, but now I find it impossible to read them all. You put the comma there because they're 2 separate clauses, subject-verb combinations, and the coordinating conjunction because there is some kind of relationship between these 2. But shows a progression. If you put comma or, that shows that it's one choice on either side. Comma and combination. These all do different things. If you want the sentence to have both sides completely and utterly balanced, then you could put a semicolon without a coordinating conjunction, but the comma does mark out that there are those independent clauses. Again, it helps us organize how meaning operates in a sentence. The third way that you need to know, introductory words, introductory phrases, like an introductory adverb plus a comma. Unsurprisingly, comma, the one day I forgot my umbrella was the day it rained. Unsurprisingly, actually modifies the was here. The one day I forgot my umbrella was, unsurprisingly, the day it rained. Why do we put it at the beginning? Well, we want to shake up that sentence structure a little bit. We want to make certain sentences stand out in different ways. But you need the comma in there to let us know that it's interrupting the normal flow of things. And I don't care if you're just talking about an introductory adverb or a participle phrase, grasping the sword with 2 hands, Lancelot swung with all his might. The subject of the sentence is Lancelot. Lancelot, comma, grasping the sword with both hands, swung with all his might would be a normal way to write it. So you put the comma to separate out that it's an introductory phrase. If it's a prepositional phrase, throughout the evening, comma, she enjoyed many pleasant conversations at the party. Again, throughout the evening modifies the conversations. So we put it front to shake up the sentence structure, but it needs to be marked as an introductory phrase. It doesn't matter if it's a prepositional phrase, an infinitive phrase, or a participle phrase, or just the adverb, or an adverbial phrase. Introductory phrases get marked off with commas. So, the 3 rules. Comma plus coordinating conjunction combines 2 things. Commas around a non-essential clause let us know that we can ignore it and still get the meaning of the sentence. And a comma after an introductory phrase lets us know that the subject is actually after the comma. Commas are important because people misuse them amazingly often. It is one of the biggest things I see. I will recommend that you do a proofreading just looking for commas. The other thing you need to look for is mistakes. Do you want to shop at this place? I know it's a typo, you know it's a typo, but these are particularly embarrassing ones because they show that you didn't go back and actually check the thing out. So not only does it give you the completely wrong meaning, it also makes you look silly. So how do you do all this editing and proofreading stuff? Here are some helpful hints. One of the things that tends to happen to people when they start editing is they start reading the paper instead of looking at just how the sentence structure works, or how the commas work, or how the language is working. You need to focus on the structure if that's what you're doing your proofread for. So start at the back, last sentence, read it, check it out. Read the sentence before it, check it out. Read the sentence before that, check it out. You do that, you will be able to focus a whole lot better and find the faults without slipping into reading, because I don't know about you, but I don't really know too many people who can read something that's going backwards. So, you can read it from the end to the beginning. Focus on just one thing. You cannot get everything in one read-through. Do focused read-throughs for whatever things you tend to do wrong. This is why doing the peer review sessions is important. It's why having a critical perspective on your own paper is important. The more you know the things you tend to mess up, the more you can correct those things. I always do a read-through just for narrative voice to make sure I'm not shifting to you, to I, to we, or something like that. I do a read-through just for tense. Am I going from past to present wrongly? Most people need to do a read-through for commas. If you have a lot of comma problems, you might need to do several read-throughs, one for coordinating conjunctions, so on and so forth. Probably need to do a read-through just for sentence structure. Print out your piece. If you're writing on a screen, you've been used to seeing it on a screen. Seeing it on actual paper might make everything look a little bit different, and it might allow you to become a little bit more aware of the things that are going on in your paper. If you don't want to print it out, you can at least change the font. And doing that will have a little bit of the same effect. It will start to look like a different paper than the one you've been staring at for hours on end. Finally, you can read the sucker aloud. Now, spoken language is not the same thing as written language. I know that, you know that. But when you speak something out loud, if the wording is awkward, if the phrasing is off, you're going to hear it a lot better than you might be able to read it. So, while I wouldn't completely rely on this or any one strategy, these are all good things that might help you to see things you'd otherwise miss. This is really a case where the details matter. Mistakes in this area can derail you a little bit, but they can also make you look like you don't care. And that's going to sour the reader against your argument before you really get into it. So spend a little bit of extra time. Do a couple different proofreads. Look for different things each time. I know you can do it. See you next time.